Hi there, my name is Oliangarius and I'm your host of our fourth episode of BeamReach and Beyond. This episode is dedicated to digital transformation and inclusive society. And joining us today are Elizabeth Kiehner, Wail Daoud, and Hatem Abuelezz, who will share the rich experience of working in digital transformation from all over the world. Who holds responsibility in developing technology that affects the wider population? Private companies developing the technology, governments required to control it, or non-profits who need to monitor. How to eliminate fear and boost societal readiness in adoption of new technology? How can design thinking help you put the user in the center and answer what's in it for me question? What is the role of privilege in digital transformation and how it might exclude vulnerable groups from benefits of the technology? For example, migrants, refugees, elderly population, people with disabilities, and others. Let's dive into this conversation. Go! All right. Welcome, everyone. We have our new episode of BeamReach and Beyond, and today's topic is going to be on digital transformation and how it impacts equality, inclusive societies, and distribution of resources. We have three fantastic speakers today. Just like to go ahead and why don't we introduce ourselves? Wail, why don't you start first? Who are you? Why are you here? And what is your relationship with digital transformation and equality and equity?
Hi, everyone. My name is Wail, also known as Wail Daoud. I work for a nonprofit organization headquartered in Berlin. We are a nonprofit organization that has been working with entrepreneurs and their ecosystems for the last 10 years, especially within the context of international economic development. I, for myself, have been working as a project lead on various projects when it comes to developing projects with various stakeholders within the context of digital transformation and economic development. Currently, I'm in Cairo at our startup hub here. We recently launched a project in the sector of civic tech, or some might know it as GovTech, where we're working together with various stakeholders in sourcing, curating, and supporting entrepreneurs with digital solutions that enhance the engagement of citizens with digital public services. And I'm looking forward to the exchange today.
Wonderful. It's fantastic to have you here, Wail. Hatem, what about yourself? Who are you? Why are you here? And what is your role in digital transformation?
Hi, Ola. Hi, Les. Hi, Wail. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Hatem Abuelezz. I am an innovation and entrepreneurship advisor and also a digital transformation expert. I'm working on digital transformation since 2010 in Egypt and also in the MENA region. We are supporting startups and entrepreneurs to act in the digital transformation process. And also we are supporting governments and the e-government transformation. And it's a long journey, started in 2010, to convince people to use basically PCs and laptops and other tech solutions. And we are now convincing people how to collaborate with AI and how to use the new emerging technologies. So it's a little bit long journey. It's 15 years almost. And I'm very excited to be here and ready and energetic to exchange information and also hear from the other participants here today in the podcast to have a fruitful discussion.
It's wonderful to have you here. Looking forward to the discussion as well. Thank you. Liz, what about yourself?
Hey, good to be with you all today. Liz Kiehner here. I am with a company called Nortal. Nortal is a strategic digital transformation partner for leading companies and governments around the world with more than 20 years of experience, both in public sector, also healthcare and enterprise, where we deliver at scale and speed value that we consider to be such that shapes a better future. That's our aspiration and always our goal, at least. So our corporate footprint, and I am joining the company for now 14 months as the Global Chief Growth Officer, looking after business from Seattle in the U.S. All the way to Oman and Riyadh and KSA. So quite a diverse footprint across North America and EMEA. And I love to be a part of these global exchanges because I think that there is so much that we can learn from one another and so much good that can be fostered by collaboration and looking for things that we have in common that can drive more value to people and to societies that we can actually deliver more meaningful work and enhance the environment and community and create overall, hopefully, a better global governance over time. I started my digital transformation journey, so to say, when I was working at IBM in a global role, then set up a digital transformation office at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. And I worked with Capgemini on a strategic offering that was global called Reinventing Work, which I probably think has some connection to some themes we'll talk about today as we look at upskilling and reskilling, for instance. And now with Nortal, I'm having a wonderful time sharing a lot of stories and lessons learned from the Nordics that hopefully inspire other governments and societies of how to create a more transparent and more really citizen-driven future.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we have very interesting speakers today because we have three different perspectives. We have a private sector perspective, so it's more commercial. We have public sector, and we have also nonprofit. I'm really curious to hear from all those perspectives and seeing in terms of collaboration, in terms of are there any tensions or also responsibility, who holds responsibility? And Hatem, you mentioned very interesting thing in your introduction that you had to kind of convince people in using technology. They seem to be not willing to use technology. What are the typical obstacles for people not using technology? Is it fear? Is it a lack of understanding? Is it lack of willingness to adapt to technology? What are the usual things? And who are usually the groups that are afraid to use technology? And is it something related to distribution of resources?
Yeah, it's a little bit challenging all the time. That every development we have in technology, people are afraid of using technology because in the past years we have like a rapid changes in technology. It's not like every 10 years we have something. Now we have every 10 minutes we have something new. So it's always about what's next and what we are going to use this technology, why you are using this technology. We have that kind of comfort zone. People are feeling that we are comfortable with the normal tools. Everything is relaxed. We don't need that hassle of infrastructure and that kind of a lot of cables and a lot of wireless connections, and everything is systematic. And, that kind of machine controlling people, these fears are surrounding everyone. It depends. It differs from the governments because the governments have a lot of bureaucratic process. So they need to understand everything impacts the security, the information, the data of their citizens, and how the process will be done. And also it's on the other side, people are afraid from using like in the MENA region, and I will speak specifically in some countries, they didn't use that kind of amount of credit cards maybe until 2020. After the pandemic, people are starting to trust the fintech because before that, people are not trusting e-commerce fintech that much because they fear of hacking, they fear of losing their money. And sometimes it goes to the political side that some other countries will spy on you. So you have to be sure that everything is closed and secured. So it depends on the awareness at first that we transfer that transformation or that information about digitalization in a proper way that match with the culture. In each country in the MENA region, we have to respect the culture of each country. And by the way, as Liz mentioned, in Estonia, I have been to Estonia in 2012, by the way, and I was in Skype headquarters, and I saw something amazing about this country is improving digitally as they have a project called eStonia. It's everything is digital. You don't have to carry documents or papers, and it was inspiring to apply it for the government here. But I think the main obstacle is the awareness, because we apply digital tools for people, but they don't have that much of awareness to use it. We don't decrease the fears they have. We don't respect the culture, because if you know, some people are working in handmade artifacts, and now you are getting to them and use the machines and use the machinery to gain more profits. Everything will be okay. They are afraid. In some places, they attack that kind of digital transformation because they trust in paperwork, because they feel it's physical. They can carry the paper and see everything in physical way and touch it. But in digital world, everything on the cloud. So we can't see this. We can't make sure that everything is secured or taken in a way that people may have that kind of mistrust with the digital awareness. And this was the gap between digital people, as they feel that they are experts and they are have the perspective of the future, and the normal people. We have the kind of fears that everything will be taken from us, and we will be controlled, as we saw in movies, for example, that machines will control us and everything will be out of our control, and we will get back to caves, and this technology is evil. I think this is the main challenge and obstacle we had in the last few years. It's now more developed because people start to understand, and there is new generation have a kind of awareness, but we still have the same obstacles, but we are trying to solve it with awareness campaigns and how to convince people this is for their good, not something to fear of.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes for those people who make decisions, you don't really think about that some populations, they don't have the same level of understanding of adaptability with technology. The first time I personally started thinking about that, how digital transformation impacts vulnerable groups, it's when I saw a couple of elderly folks in the airport, and they couldn't speak English. They couldn't speak any language that airport staff would communicate. It was in the middle of pandemic, and staff was requiring QR codes. And they were so confused and they were so lost. They started crying because they simply could not understand this whole fact of QR codes or technology. So it was also really interesting how technology sometimes, very often, moves a lot faster. And if you actually don't include it, don't start thinking from the blind spot perspective of populations that are either migrants, refugees, or people who have disabilities or elderly, who could be potentially excluded and not being able to take advantage of this technology. Anyone else has any thoughts on that? What is your experience on including groups that are not normally as adapted to technology and potentially could miss out on the advantages and benefits of this technology?
I think it all depends on the context. And what I have witnessed in the context of international development is that the discrepancy of access to digital tools and knowledge in the first place, to build on what Hatem was saying in terms of awareness, is digital illiteracy is higher in certain age groups, gender groups. So it all depends on the context. And what I've seen in the global majority, especially in the rural areas and the regional areas, there is just a lack of digital skills training. So where you would see in other regions that it's already part of the normal school curriculum, in other regions it's missing. And then especially depending on the age and gender. I've worked on a project, for example, in Senegal, where I was working with people from academia, so highly educated people, but they were not so much trained in when it comes to digital transformation. We were running a project based on a multi-stakeholder approach where we were bringing different stakeholders together to develop programs to support women entrepreneurs in the area of renewable energies. And it was, I think, just before the pandemic hit or exactly during. So we had to do a lot of the activities that were initially planned in person digitally. And that was a huge challenge, because even though these people were highly educated, experts in their fields, it was difficult to create a platform of collaboration with all of these. And there was a lot of mistrust as well. So this is also what Hatem was alluding to. Here it was more in terms mistrust in terms of methodologies. So they were used to an academic methodology that is very structured. And here we come introducing design thinking to them, and also working together in a decentralized way that is not so hierarchical, where everybody has a voice, everybody's ideas is valuable. And it was very challenging. So for me, I think the obstacles are, number one, access, and then the lack of training, and also in terms of mentality, like the mentality shift. This is something I think we cannot forgo anymore, that digital is the way now to collaborate with each other. And not even if we are in decentralized way, like living decentrally or not, but also if we're actually sitting in the same office.
I appreciate the design thinking reference, because ultimately I think people want to be heard and people want to be seen. And
Yes.
when you think about digital transformation, it is like the ultimate change management challenge, when the principal question when you're going through or managing any change for your stakeholders is, what's in it for me? So if people cannot perceive that there is something beneficial in it for them, they might be very skeptical, very reluctant, very intimidated about the change. So, there are some positive examples. There's two references that I was reading about in the Pacific Islands, where there was actually some use of technology and digitization that was helping to create opportunities for women's economic empowerment. One was around women in Tonga that have been using Facebook to sell their handicrafts, and this was, of course, giving a material benefit to them. And another was a nonprofit initiative that started between a corporate and government collaboration between Vodafone and the Ministry of Women, Children, and Poverty Alleviation, where they offered free advice over SMS on legal rights relating to gender-based violence issues that were happening in Fiji. So when you can show that there is something positive or helpful that technology will bring to you, then of course it can at times be easier to get people to adopt this. But certainly, especially after the pandemic, where the speed of digital transformation accelerated even faster, it's very important for many countries to think about like what they are doing to give people the skills that they need to be fluent in this new language of technology that sometimes we over-index on an expectation that people understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for those who create these digital services, you also need to be educated on your own biases.
Yes.
Now, as we know, all the technology, the facial recognition technology that does not recognize black faces, or one example that happened in New Zealand, the New Zealander who's of Asian ancestry, he went to the Department of Internal Affairs to renew his passport. And surprise, surprise, he wanted to take a picture and the technology said subject's eyes are closed, simply because technology had a bias of someone supposed to be Caucasian. And since he was Asian, his eyes was not recognized. So kind of knowing these biases, and if you blissfully unaware and ignorant, your technology actually not going to end up working at all.
And especially if you cater for the wide population of folks and not just for a niche, but if you work in healthcare and financial sector and public sector especially, then you're really going to miss out on all those things, and you're going to not be able to cater for all the groups, isn't it? Have you seen any examples of similar example to what I mentioned, where technology was developed in such a way that it was problematic and not fully catering for all population? That was quite niche. Maybe from your experience, maybe some examples that you've heard from others.
Yeah, actually, it was a big issue. We are transforming digitally in the financial services. So it's a little bit hard that people are not thinking that financial services are developing, starting from people exchanging goods, and then they are exchanging gold and precious metals or something like that. And now they are transferring to money, the paper money, and checks and other ways of exchanging the value. And now they are thinking that the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies are the next move. So a few years ago, people are afraid to use that kind of credit cards or wave payment, online payments, because they are not trusting that way of transferring money, and they are not sure that they are paying the total amount and the other side will receive it. And it was a bit challenging not to convince people, but to do the process the way the people understand, because we need to do like a reverse for the process, and using, by the way, the design thinking process, and start to make workshops with people from different regions. Because if we speak about country like Egypt, we can say that Cairo and some major cities are developed by far from other places in the rural areas or in Upper Egypt. It's not easy for them to understand that's the way to exchange money. So we need to do like workshops and also re-education for people who are educated, but they are not in the society that supports that movement. So we start to educate them and aware them about that and understand the needs. So some companies came from that, like startups in fintech industry. They start to apply these requirements from people. So people feel like it's easy to communicate with these platforms. And, as cash was the main way to pay for any good. And that's why a lot of companies came to Egypt, like Amazon, like Uber, like other companies came from abroad. They have that option to pay with cash, or to pay after you receive the product, or to pay cash with a driver. It was not usual for them, but they understand that people are not trusting that much of financial transfers and internet transfers, even drivers of Uber or other companies of transportation, feeling that money will not be in their pockets now. It's something not feeling comfortable, because they have to wait like for 14 days to receive their money after collecting each month. And companies start to reverse the process and start to understand why these people are afraid from that. And everything is exchanging by understanding the culture of how people collaborate with these digital platforms. And that's why we need to digitalize, but digitalize with the concepts of people, with the culture, respect the culture, respect their mindset, their mentality. Because we are not changing the culture or not changing the mentality, we are creating something match with that, not to push people or to make people do that. This is the digitalization world, and you have to adapt anyway. It's not about adaptation; it's about respecting culture and transferring these digitalization process match with people, culture, and mentality.
I think it's important to put the user or the human at the center of any development of products or services, and especially within the digital transformation. And I think we do have, let's say, the right methodology and approach with that. We've been talking about design thinking, and here the same with regards to the programs that we implement when we work with different entrepreneurs. We always advocate for a human-centered approach, meaning that whoever the target group is should be the one who gets to decide actually how the service should look like and catering to their needs, etc. It should never be like something that comes externally without adapting locally. Hatem, you mentioned these global companies that have a proven product, let's say, in other regions, and we cannot expect the same metrics to work in other cultural contexts. So here it's highly important to adapt that to the local cultural context. And I think, but it's also, I wouldn't say it's so binary either. I think it's also, on the other hand, it's about educating as well, like teaching and learning how to use these tools then. So it should be a dialogue. It's all about sort of like having a dialogue and not just like thumping into a new market, offering this product and expecting everybody and how to know how to use it, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, I think especially in financial services, it's important to recognize some of the unintended consequences. So we have created our share of loyalty programs and apps and real-time streaming data platforms and IT modernization, blah, 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 blah. This is all maybe very beneficial to the financial institutions. But if you look at the demographics, more and more countries that have an elderly and aging population, there's more and more risk and scams that are going out from people that are pretending to be their financial institution, that I have seen like many examples personally and firsthand of a man or a woman being confused, like, did this email actually really come from my bank, or is this a phishing scheme? And I think lots of things as some of our services, especially in financial services and insurance, have become digital. As people are trying to catch up, there's also like the fraudulent element that's coming in and trying to take advantage of the situation. So that's like another vector of where we need to be careful and cautious. And I think like the financial services companies should assume like some degree of responsibility for education, enablement, managing this risk, and making sure that they can, to the best of their ability, address the fact that this is happening more and more, which I'm sure that we have all seen examples of this in our own families or personal networks.
Yeah, actually very interesting, since we're talking about financial sector. What is your perspective on this automated loan approvals that they just collect data? So it's taking away this personal connection and seeing the bigger picture. So you see the zip code of a person, you see, I don't know, the work experience or whatever not. And based on this, it becomes very AI based, and that could generate bias and it could exclude potentially some groups depending on their income or depending on their financial status, or even more than that, depending on the race, depending on the gender, depending on the disability potentially even. Have you had an experience to that, or do you know any of the stories? And what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I had statistics around this a while back, as far as there definitely are many stories in the U.S. where there's evidence that, there's flat out discrimination of certain people based on their zip code, their race, and things like this. However, having gone through a loan process and application, it can take like painfully long. So it is like understanding like what is the trade-off that is tolerable. But then you also have to question sometimes the logic that is being applied or who and how the AI is being trained, because a dirty little secret in the US as you look at your credit score, if you are somebody that stays out of debt and pays your bills always on time, your credit rating actually goes down, not up. So you would think oh, I'm showing I'm a very good citizen. I'm staying out of debt. I don't have a bunch of loans, where in most cases, your credit score goes higher the more that you have taken out loans and show that you have debt. Ideally, you're paying it off on time still. But there's a lot of things as you look at the approval process and the rules-based engines that go into determining these factors that I would question the logic of. But luckily, I'm not in the financial services business to have to answer to this every day.
Yeah, I'll be also curious because we have Hatem and Wail have experience in kind of looking into different countries. It's project specific. What is your experience, Liz, with are there specific methodologies or approach? Because Nortal is known as the digital unicorn of, supporting countries, supporting governments, and, basically created the whole of the Estonia program. Is there any specific approach that kind of having this inclusivity by design as an organization just to avoid this kind of things?
Yeah. So as an approach, and this is highly complex, and we have lots of very long papers that get into the details of this approach, but we talk a lot about our creation of a seamless team to deliver a project or initiative that the result is by the end customer or the citizen a seamless experience, or even the ability to realize proactive services or life event services. So before you even need to ask for a service, the service comes to you. So that is I think the ideal world or the nirvana state. But how we get there is definitely identifying and engaging with all of our stakeholders and, of course, end users, and by really having a great degree of empathy for the citizen experience, and that is being inclusive of all citizens, and designing for accessibility and usability in mind of all of these people. And obviously, we can break these down into target segments and personas, and really have also a deep understanding and orchestration of diversity and inclusion within our own teams. So we have multidisciplinary thought coming from different people of different races, ethnicities, also different parts of the world. So we can really think about how to design solutions that are inclusive and that also can be durable and withstand the test of time, and give us a good foundation by which to build upon. Whilst over this whole process, because some transformations can be 5 years long, could be decades long. We continue to work with the Estonian government now, 24 years later, and everyone continues to advance. So this is a digital transformation has no end date. Digital transformations are not finite. So in the spirit of continuously improving, how are you also designing mechanisms to monitor and measure your impact over time in a way that you can learn and adapt continuously? So I think this all ends up to be highly complex, definitely easier said than done. But I think that this can help you to set yourself up to really create a foundation of strength that you can continue to mature and evolve over time as many dynamics within the world might change around you.
I love the reference of the seamless teams. So it's really kind of representation, making it easier for consumer to realize they have a problem. And before they even realize they have a problem, there is already a solution. So that definitely sounds very seamless. And I definitely agree with you when it comes to having diverse teams. When you have diverse team, and when your team is a mirror of the society, is a mirror of your consumer, you're more likely than not to understand the needs, and more likely than not to actually adapt to the needs instead of trying to guess what they actually need. Wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's totally important to understand. I agree with Liz that digital transformation is a process as until the end of the earth, and it's not always related to just technologies we know now. We have like maybe within 2,000 or 3,000 years, people are looking on our technologies like something very, very basic. I think it's something to be involved in curriculums and education, daily life, and everyone is appreciating that transformation or that changes that affects their life in a good way. I think this is the responsibility that we have as an experts or people working in initiatives like that, to support that kind of understanding that digital transformation is not something we have like a trend like AI, so we need to use an AI. So this is not the issue. We need to use something we really need, and we can apply according to many concerns we have in each community. And I think this is the core value about digital transformation. It's not about transforming into technologies and get to the trend, but to get the benefits from that technology according to our needs and requirements.
I'm curious to hear who then holds responsibility right now. So is it the government that holds responsibility? Is it some sort of independent governance like UNDP? Is it the private sector that actually designs and delivers technology? Or is it the nonprofit that monitors and fixes the issues that happen due to lack of inclusivity in some services? Is there some sort of responsibility happening right now? And who gets punished and who gets the reward of being actually inclusive?
I think it depends. And ultimately, it's a collective responsibility. We are all part responsible in shaping the life that we live in or that we share. And if you want to really like break it down, is then also within like the private sector, it's whoever is developing and offering the service holds sort of like the individual responsibility. But from a like ethical point of view, I think it's a collective responsibility. As you mentioned, like everybody plays a different role, and it is key when it comes to offering services that affect the collective, different communities. Then it is of utmost importance to bring everybody to the table. Like, I can actually not see any developments within digital transformation without having a multi-stakeholder approach. It would just not be sustainable in the long term, and people will not adopt to it as well. There's so much on offer. I mean, that is also the beauty of the digital transformation, is that there is an abundance of ideas, an abundance of offers. And that means that we owe it to ourselves and to others. And when I say we, I mean companies, governments, so local communities, NPOs, etc., to make sure that everybody's voice got heard and considered in developing and delivering services and products that have an impact on everybody's lives.
Yeah, I think and agree that digital transformation does require a joint effort by companies, nonprofits, and governments. But in having this joint responsibility, there is no, so to say, single throat to choke, that if there is a problem, who is at fault? Or if there is some like huge benefit or gain to be made, like who collects that huge win or benefit. But I think that between companies, nonprofits, and governments, many things are needed, including training and retraining of existing workers that may be impacted by digital transformation, integrating digital skills into school and educational curriculum, and in the corporate side, promoting career paths in the digital sector that may not exist. So there's, no shortage of, let's say, impact or work to be done. But I guess like who is keeping track of like the checks and balances and like what does the playing field look like really as we consider like a corporate, nonprofit, and government and how well they're working together, which arguably is a very, very different picture in different parts of the world in different countries.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And also if there is no governance involved, there is no benefits to also for some private sector actors to even use that, because let's be honest, inclusive by design and inclusivity is expensive. And I could imagine some private sector will say, you know what, let's just deliver it as how it is and then, end it and then move on to the next project. And if it's not monitored, there is no some sort of punishment for that, then there will be some repercussions. Starting this year, there is a lot of laws on accessibility of technology in Europe, at least in Germany. Been lots of laws regarding that in terms of accessibility of websites, accessibility of digital tools for public services, and so on and so forth. So government is stepping in and thinking about from this perspective.
It's the same in Egypt, actually.
Also, okay.
Yes,
right.
yes. Recently, we are starting to work on a project that will work on bringing different stakeholders together in order to make digital services more accessible to people with disabilities. So it is also an endeavor of the Egyptian government.
Wonderful. It's really wonderful to hear how the topic of accessibility and inclusivity is becoming a lot more hands-on rather than conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, isn't it? So it's becoming part of any product and service development rather than let's have unconscious bias training and move on from that. Wail, maybe from your perspective, I'll be curious to hear what kind of projects have you been involved that not supported some sort of digital transformation only, but have impacted social challenges and contributed to economic empowerment and maybe empowered some marginalized communities that were normally not really included in society, that actually gave them voice, tools, and technology. I'll be curious because you had quite a lot of experience all around the world in being part of these projects.
Indeed, I've been very fortunate in working with different communities all over the world, working on, making access or creating access to knowledge and markets. And most recently, I was part of a project where we were working with different teams that were trying to develop digital platforms to offer trainings, but also educate about market access in terms of women in rural areas of Rwanda. So this was a team of women entrepreneurs that came together. So it was a multidisciplinary team and also an international team. So some of them came from Germany, some from Rwanda, and together they developed this platform to connect experienced women entrepreneurs from Rwanda with aspiring women entrepreneurs in the rural regions of Rwanda. So here it was sort of like a mentoring platform, but also a platform that created sort of like this community and training soon as well. So this is one example of the different projects that, that through digital products or services that enable to access people in rural areas.
I love this collaboration of different countries because you see different solutions from very different perspectives that you'll never even imagine. And if I'm not mistaken, you also had people from other countries involved. So it was Indonesia.
Yes, correct. Correct. So the project was called the Decentralized Development Lab, which was implemented with the support of the GIZ. And it was a 2-phase project. So in the first phase, we selected 4 teams, actually. So we had teams from Indonesia, Rwanda, and Germany. Parts of them were also based in the Netherlands. And we supported them throughout, in the first phase, I think 6 or 8 months with training and also financial support to develop digital solutions to global challenges. So these were challenges in various sectors, ranging from water supply to e-mobility in Indonesia, or supporting rural women in Rwanda. And through a decentralized approach, we supported them with collaborating with each other, because these teams, most of them came together through this project. So beforehand, they haven't really worked together. And really from an idea, they developed a prototype. And 2 of these teams then got further funding to actually implement those prototypes. So the project in Rwanda is still up and running. And the other project that we selected was a platform that is still working on transforming Jakarta, which is going to be the biggest city in the world in the next couple of years, to implement e-mobility, e-buses, so for a greener mobility sector. And we're still in touch with these different teams. They're still working on them. And I think these endeavors would not have been possible. They would not have found a platform, a methodology, and the digital tools in order to work together. As you said, the beauty of them being from different countries brings in different perspectives, brings in different expertise, and also different target groups. So even though, let's say, the team the team in Rwanda, if the project was only implemented by German people, because maybe they developed a similar platform in other countries, even in Africa, that might not have the local knowledge and also the access to the rural people. So this was key that they had also the direct access to these communities, and it was not designed from afar. And the same for the project in Indonesia. The ones that were based in the Netherlands, even though they're originally from Indonesia, they brought in external expertise that they gained abroad, and they could directly implement it in a local context.
Yeah, I think we have something exciting about that, about the societal readiness index. We gathered information about the startup ecosystem and not only in Egypt, maybe in North Africa. What's the type of readiness and the index of readiness to accept that kind of digital transformation initiatives.
Okay. Yeah, the internet can be a bit spotty here in Egypt. In Berlin too. I've had also the same comments when I was participating in meetings or trainings digitally in Berlin.
We're talking about big digital transformation projects, but I guess the first one will be internet. That'd be a good start. Liz, would you like to share maybe your own experience in kind of in maybe some projects that you've been working on that impact people economically in power accidentally or by either accidentally or directly.
Yeah, happy to. So Nortal created the world's first e-census in Oman, and this was a 2-year project in collaboration with the Oman National Center for Statistics and Information. And in this, we used 24 different administrative registers providing data for the census and radically decrease the amount of people it takes to actually conduct the census, and also saved $30 million for the country in the process of this. How this impacts the people, of course, going back to like the demographic data and statistics and actually knowing like more in detail about your population. Therefore, how can you better serve them? This now lays the foundation of a proactive government, and a government that can make near real-time decision-making for people, and also faster policy making if and when policy changes are needed. So when I was speaking a few moments ago about this like aspirational nirvana state of proactive services and life event services, these are some of the prerequisites that one needs in order to deliver such services to your people. I think another example is some work that we did in Botswana. And with the Botswanan government, we were aiming to shift from a primarily diamond-based revenue to a more diversified economy. And in this, we were working to really look at public finance management and do a digital transformation of the tax authority itself, which ended up to like really find great efficiency gains, decrease the cost of collection, and really get rid of some corruption and create much more transparency as far as this contributing to public trust, and also increased revenue collection. So this creates a much better digital public services as far as like what it is like as a citizen to pay taxes, and also did a lot as far as the building of trust overall, and started to create also some new high-tech job opportunities in the meanwhile. So I think all of these steps, like nothing is a magic bullet, but they can all contribute to having like a very, very significant impact. So like the tax administration system was evaluated as the most modern tax administrative system currently in actual use in Africa. So we are hoping, as far as international development goes, to find the opportunities globally to really work with the international development community on more and more of these cases, because we take a little bit of pride in ourselves as not being afraid to come into country and do a first of a kind project, because we know that we are very good at dealing with complexity, also dealing with local customs and people, and getting to a mutually beneficial outcome at the end. So I think it's a challenge that we're always up for.
I have so many thoughts on what you just mentioned. The first thought, it's very close to my heart because I live in Berlin, and in Germany, that's quite interesting because in Germany there are obviously censuses as anywhere else in the world, but due to the history, due to the past of Germany, there are some things that are not collected. So one of those things is race, because of history, because of trauma, and how it's connected to the dark history of Germany. And the biggest problem in that I see as someone who works also in the topic in diversity inclusion is that if you're not represented, if you're not counted, you do not count, basically. So if you don't count those who are Blacks, and there has been an official census in Germany 2 years ago, and there is 1 million of people who identify as Black in Germany. It means 1 million voices are not actually counted, and their problems are not really represented and are not seen and not taken into account. So it's really, really nice to hear that what Nortal has done in terms of modernizing census and giving the opportunity for government to actually know what kind of issues are there for population, being able to zoom in and solve those issues. Another question I have for you, more of the question and thought, why do you think some governments are a lot more, so to say, conservative and not as willing to adapt technology? I mean, we all know that Germany is known as a very advanced economy, but not so, and I know also Nortal does work also with Germany, but not so willing to adapt to e-government as Estonia does, for example. It does depend on size, does depend on history. Are there any other things?
Yeah, so I think there needs to be leadership in the country with the political will to change. And I think the U.S. has a lot in common with Germany in this regard. There were a lot of headlines in the press last year about the fact that we were speaking earlier about accessibility. There was a headline that said literally only 50% of websites that are controlled by the government but used by citizens are accessible or live up to our modern accessibility standards, which is pretty bad. And then there was something else that came out from the CIO's office at the federal level saying that only 3% of what could be digitized by the U.S. government as far as what citizens interfaced with have been digitized. So I think that for U.S. and Germany, where there is such a complex system and there's so much to unravel as far as like how to even create at a policy level, more simplification. It's just a daunting process that I feel like it's a spaghetti monster that nobody wants to deal with, and nobody wants to untangle, and therefore it just stays as it is, which is a shame because so many countries are like racing ahead as far as their level of development and digitization and just like creating an easy citizen experience, an environment that's more easy to set up businesses and for entrepreneurs to like get up and running in a matter of minutes rather than days or months. Like there's so much economic value behind like making such an investment as well. But it goes back to like the political will and also understanding that before we even talk about what the technology looks like, there's some policy decisions that need to be made that then have cascading consequences. Like one wonderful thing that I love about Estonia is this ask me once policy. Like you can ask me once for my name, my social security number, my address, etc. And that's it. And I expect if I permission you to share it with all of these entities that you do that rather than going into 10 different offices and getting asked 10
Germany,
or 15 times.
Germany,
like,
are you listening, Germany?
So yeah, to me, it a lot of it goes starts at the political will and the policy level, even before you even shine a light on the technology that would be used to implement such a thing.
Yeah, Estonia, Estonia is truly fascinating. There's everything because you can, if I'm not mistaken, you can vote, you can do everything online, absolutely everything. And also, I also learned that in Germany, when you have a child, you need to physically, if I'm not mistaken, if someone is listening, I'm not saying it correctly, I'm sorry. But when you have a child, you within a week have to go physically to a place to collect some documents to be able to qualify for support for money from the government to have a baby. And while in Estonia, it automatically, all the things come to you automatically without even you thinking about that. So that just is such a beautiful process, how everything is truly seamless, as you mentioned.
Yes.
It is ridiculous the amount of physical presence that you have to endure within the German bureaucratic madness. I mean, what is really inspiring is to see that a lot of developing countries are installing this digital transformation and making services more accessible. And yeah, it could be for sure, like Liz mentioned, the political leadership that allows it. But I guess Germany has also just like a bureaucratic monster to untangle. I like the metaphor that you used, Liz, of the spaghetti monster. I mean, even in countries like Indonesia or Greece, you can do a lot of things now online, which a lot of my friends or some of the participants were shocked when I tell them, like, yeah, if you want a police clearance certificate or even just like a parking document for your car in Berlin, you have to physically go. Yeah, and the only thing that you can do online for starters is to make an appointment. And if you're lucky, you'll get an appointment soon. And then you have to show up and do the payment and everything. Whereas in other countries, you can just apply online and it gets sent to you. And this is the way to go.
The other thing that I also think that plays role in Germany and other countries in Europe not willing to adapt technology and have digital transformation, all those things, it's also the lack of the fear of privacy. Yeah. So if you look at history, if you look at all these things of, once again, talking about the history of Germany, but in Berlin, for example, there is still trauma from the past of people not willing to leave digital footprint. So anywhere you just use cash. And very often, even in nice restaurants and nice places, you can't use card. And not only because restaurants want to avoid paying taxes, but also because people are not willing to leave digital footprint there. And that's also for many European countries. If you look at GDPR, if you look at other things, that also potentially is an obstacle for digital transformation. Based on all the privacy laws and security and so on and so forth, and also mentality of people not willing to give personal data.
Yeah, that's true. And that is a good point. And I remember when I first joined Nortal, our CEO logging into his Estonian record to show me like how the government sees him and how he can see and permission anyone who has access to his data. So the data is owned by the citizen, the data is controlled by the citizen, and this fundamentally helps to mitigate this fear. But the society, again, needs to be designed that way, because I have heard the same thing talking to government officials in Canada, in the US, that some of the things that we've done in the Nordics seem impossible in the US or Canada because so many people will fundamentally distrust the government, or if the government has this data, what thing will they do with it that we do not wish for them to do with it. But there is a way over time to win the trust of the people. But this is, again, something that requires, back to the political will and the commitment and the promise that you are making to your citizens as far as what this relationship and the situation looks like.
The question to all of you, and it's quite broad, so I'm curious whether you have any particular recommendation for either government officials, or if they're listening to this podcast, or private sector or nonprofit. I know there is no best tool, so to say, but when you develop technology, and yes, you use design thinking, yes, you use all those tools, is there some sort of methodology apart from that you kind of start thinking of who could be harmed if I develop this technology, who could be missing out, could I create potential discrimination or inequality? Do you think about it when you develop products or services? Does anyone think about it? Because if you don't really think about it, if you don't consciously include, you unconsciously exclude, right? So that's majority of exclusion or discrimination happens unintentionally. But is there some sort of more conversation happening through e-government or anything related to digital transformation in general?
Well, I think people ought to be very, very focused on both data strategy and data governance. And data strategy and data governance is like the first rung of the ladder to AI. So everyone is like maniacally obsessed about AI at the moment. But like, don't even talk to me about what you're doing with AI until you demonstrate to me that you have a sound data strategy and data governance. And ideally then for things to work in the best way, show me how your data interoperability is working. So a lot of the system in Estonia is built on X-Road, which is an open source platform for data interoperability. So, if that is a solution or an accelerator or something else is, I think even as far as like gaining or losing the trust of people, it is like having a very clear understanding of how data is handled, how data is held, for how long, who has access, all of the questions that people have, and what arises suspicion in people, I think most often.
I think it's the government are responsible for a crucial role in supporting and facilitating digital transformation to promote economic growth, innovation, and societal progress. I think we always advise and recommend that the government needs to make like policy frameworks, develop and implement policies that encourage digital innovation and transformation, like infrastructure investments, because we have like a classification of infrastructure in some of countries in the MENA region. If you want to apply the same thing, it doesn't work easily in some countries, and it's like a piece of cake in other countries. So we have that debate all the time with the Saudis, as people from Egypt working in digital transformation initiatives in Saudi Arabia. Maybe in most of the governmental projects, there are Egyptians working there, like a techie people. And the debate that you don't have that in Egypt also. So why? And we say that it's the matter of infrastructure investments. We have investments in infrastructure, but it's not easy to include everything in the same time. It's a big country, a lot of population, struggling economical issues. So if you like give the people choice between having digital services to improve their lives and give them something to eat, in some places they will prefer something to eat. It's better now to feed me than you digitalize services for me. I think on the other hand, it will take like generations to improve the skills, to support education and training programs that actually enhance digital literacy and skills, because we have now digital programs and educational programs that teach children that tech enablement skills, but in real life they don't have that kind of practices to see these kind of cutting edge technologies and how to apply it. I think it's the matter also of public and private partnerships, and that's what's happening now in Egypt and other countries in the MENA region. I think the governments are going now to partner with the private sectors to support these initiatives. I think it's like some kind of everyone is responsible for this, not only the government. So I think it's a matter of collaboration between all the stakeholders related to that to these initiatives. And the one last thing I recommend also, that sometimes we have that kind of trending technologies and we have all the tools and infrastructure to be applied, but we are not ready to accept these technologies. Maybe on a cultural way, the society readiness, as I was speaking before the voice is cutting, I was speaking about the societal readiness index. Is the society ready to accept this kind of technology or not? Is there a real need to use these technologies now? Is this the most important for improving people's lives? Because we have that kind of initiatives for women empowerment, and also for people in rural areas. But is these women are in a good economical situation now to improve them digitally, or we need to understand the basic needs at first and apply it digitally afterwards? It's something of filling the gap, because I always say that for my startup ecosystem, that you need to go to the streets to build your startups. Startups are not behind keyboards. We can do a lot of business plans, strategic management, and vision and mission and all these nice things, and do pitching to investors and get investments and funds. But people in streets are our customers, our users. We need to watch them and to observe their behavior and to understand the real needs behind the technology, because technology is just a tool. It's not something that will change your life. Maybe change it for bad, for good. I don't know. It depends on the usage, and it depends on the direction that governments and all other stakeholders are directing people on how to use this technology for good.
I absolutely agree with you, Hatem. And I think in order to honor multi-stakeholder governance, it is of utmost importance that in any endeavor, when it comes to developing products or services, that all voices should be heard. And concretely, I would say there should be a digital platform where everybody gets invited to chip in and voice their concerns. And also maybe it would be useful, and I would actually even advocate for it, to have an external body that gets to analyze and rate the digital inclusiveness of certain products or services. And I wouldn't say it should be on a punitive basis, but more on a recommendation basis, like having a rating and also then recommendations on like how a certain product or service could be improved.
I think that's a wonderful summary and wonderful last words for our conversation today. Definitely need to have more collaboration among different parties, whether it's private, non-profit and public, and definitely a recommendation, because you don't know what you don't know. So even if you have good intentions in developing the best technology in the world for the society, you have your own biases, you have your own hidden things that you haven't even noticed, your blind spots. So it's really nice to have someone to actually point it out for you. So you have not only good intentions, but also good implementation. Thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. I will be adding recommendations and some tips and whatever articles you have in mind also for our audience. It's been wonderful, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Ola.
Thank you so much. It was an honor speaking with all of you. Very inspiring, and I hope we'll keep in touch.
Yes, I hope our paths cross soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback, recommendations, or would like to be a speaker in our next episode, reach out via hi@beamreach-inclusion.com. Also, if you need our expertise with diversity inclusion training, would like us to conduct a comprehensive audit, or need a helping hand with DI strategy, don't be shy and get in touch. Stay tuned, and until the next episode.